Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
It was like a war zone in the sky.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
Went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
From great escapes...
Run, it's gonna blow.
...to mad moments. And highway robbery...
This is now going to cost you £24,000.
...to highway landings.
Holy...
It's definitely something they don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
We reveal exclusive footage never seen on television. So keep your seatbelt fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights, the tactical military response to an airborne altercation.
The SWAT team stormed the aircraft with machine guns drawn. I'm wondering what is going on.
Terror over the Pacific Ocean.
We saw a flash and heard a sound, and then the cabin started filling up with smoke.
And the dream birthday gift that became a nightmare fledgling flight.
This was my wife's first time in an airplane, and it crashed.
December 2014, the Lake District, England. The Turner family are heading off for a trip to Las Vegas for a much-needed break after a long illness. Their holiday from hell starts as it will continue.
So we set off in the morning, everything was fine, you know, we're all looking forward to going, very excited. Packed the car and set off.
The whole journey down to Gatwick took us hours. We were in traffic jams. It was just bad from the offset, really.
But after a restless night at a hotel near Gatwick, the family wake up raring to get the holiday started.
So we got up in the morning, got on the shuttle bus, which took us into the terminal, and went through security fine, everything was fine, and went to the gate to board. The funny thing is, when we got on the plane, my eldest daughter was upset, and I'd actually said to one of the cabin crew, can you have a little chat with Kenya? She doesn't really like flying. And he came over to her and said, oh, don't get upset, nothing ever happens on these flights, they're boring.
Words that the attendant on board flight VS-43 would no doubt later regret. The problems start as soon as the plane leaves the tarmac.
And every time you take off, you can always hear the wheels coming up after a certain length of time. They always make that noise. But they started coming up and there was a huge bang, Turned around and I said to Stace, I said, something's not right there. That was dead loud, that.
The passengers have no idea of the danger they are in, but Stacey's dad Norman spots something worrying as he follows the plane's progress on an online flight tracker.
I noticed it go over Cornwall into the Bristol Channel. But then for some unknown reason, the flight started to circle and circle and circle. I couldn't really work it out. So I actually messaged Stace. I said, is there something wrong? He said, no, we don't think there's anything wrong. It's circling for some unknown reason. And this went on for quite a few minutes.
High in the sky over the West Country, the pilot tells the 447 passengers that their holiday flight is being aborted.
And he came over the tannoy and said, there's a problem with the hydraulics. We're going to go back to Gatwick. I texted my dad back and said, there's something wrong with the hydraulics, but don't worry, we're going to land at Gatwick and then we'll be off again before we know it.
You said not to worry.
No, there was
no
panic.
He said they're going to fix it. They're going to fix it and we'll set off again, no issues. So we turned around, didn't we? We turned around.
News of the ailing 747 spreads to aviation enthusiasts across the UK, including geography teacher Jack Davison, who's tucked up in bed enjoying a lie-in during the Christmas holidays.
My friend messaged me and said, I've been on the internet and there is an aircraft with problems close to you. I very quickly got changed. I ran to my car, it was a bit dramatic. I drove to the airport. I knew there was a footpath locally that probably overlooked the airport, should I find it. I got there, quickly looked at an Ordnance Survey map, worked out where the footpath was, and ran, because he said it's imminent, it's coming in any minute.
Thousands of feet above Jack, the pilot has started to eject fuel, ready for an emergency landing.
We had seats just behind the wing, and sort of just looking out the window, and next thing you could see all the kerosene, all the jet fuel, you know, coming out the end of the wing.
You cannot land the airplane at the same weight you took it off at. You must get rid of that gas. If you're going to come back and land where you took off, you have to either dump it or burn it off. So that's an absolute requirement. And also, without having fuel in your tanks, less probability of a fire breaking out as soon as you land.
It didn't look good because you thought, oh, you know, we use that stuff to fly the plane with, and it's all coming out the end of the wings.
Jack has arrived at the prime filming spot at the end of the Gatwick runway.
As I was sort of coming across the field rather quickly and getting covered in mud, I heard a plane and I could just see that it was the plane in question. It was a Virgin Atlantic 747, and I assumed it was going to come and land, and I wasn't really in a very good position to film it. So as it neared the airport, I got my camera out and attempted to film the aircraft landing, but to my relief it didn't actually land, it was just in a low fly past of the airport.
After getting this very shaky footage of the first flyover, Jack looks for somewhere to hold his camera steady.
I do have a tripod, but in the rush I had forgotten it. Behind me we have the entire airport, and this trusty fence post is the one I use to stabilise my camera. I held the camera on really tightly onto a fence post, which was good because in the end the footage was quite still, really. There wasn't much shake to it.
The pilot of the Virgin airliner is still trying to assess the damage to his aircraft.
They needed to see what the problem was, and so he would go down into Gatwick as if he was going to land, but then he would go back up again, and he did that about 3 times so they could take some pictures or see what was happening.
At some point, there was sort of a Chinese whisper. Chinese whispers came around saying that none of the wheels had come down or had gone up or something like that. At that time, when we thought we had no wheels, we thought, well, that was it. That was it.
It's a terrifying wait for the 447 passengers circling over Gatwick as they prepare themselves for an emergency landing in a plane without wheels. February 2013, Utah, USA. Mother of one, Cara Fielding, is about to turn 21. Her parents have lined up a very special present, her first ever flight. Husband Jonathan will be videoing her birthday treat. He'll be making a souvenir of a day Cara will never, ever forget.
My parents told me about the plans for this plane ride a few days before my birthday, and we waited till a clear day and then we went up.
When Cara found out, she was really excited and, you know, a little nervous too. This was her first time in an airplane.
Cara's first ever flight will take off from Logan Cache Airport at the base of the Bear River Mountains.
So the day of the flight, it was a beautiful day, about 40s or 50s. We were really excited. We had our 7-month-old with us at the time.
The original plan had been for the pilot, a friend of the family, to take Cara up alone in a small stunt plane.
We went to the hangar where we were meeting my mom and dad and the pilot. And we got to the hangar and he said that the plane we were originally going to take up had been dinged in the process of moving planes around that morning, and so for safety we would take the bigger one, which allowed more passengers to come up.
I convinced my wife to take our 7-month-old boy on the plane, and I thought it'd be really fun, a really great experience for him.
I thought, well, what if we get in a crash? I don't want to take my baby. What happens if we get in a crash? And then I also thought that statistically, airplanes are safer than cars, and so we should be fine.
Cara puts aside her concerns and boards the Cessna, along with her mother, her husband, and her young son, for her first experience of air travel.
When we first got in the plane, I didn't even know how to buckle my seatbelt. The pilot had to do that for me.
So the takeoff was fairly normal. We taxied up to the end of the runway. There was a little bit of frost on the windows. It was a little bit cold, and we took off and everything was normal and fine.
As soon as we got in the air, it started turning and the forces on your stomach make you feel a little bit queasy. I was so excited.
So being up in an airplane was really interesting to see what your city looked like from a bird's eye view. After we'd been flying around for a little while, I suggested, hey, let's go over the mountains to the neighboring city. So we started to climb, and we were at the height of the mountains, and that's when the pilot came on over the intercom and said that there was carburetor ice and that there's a problem with the plane and that we need to find a place to land.
There is a buildup of ice in the fuel induction system, which means the engine loses power.
So we are over the top of the overpass, and we were just told that there's carburetor ice. So this is kind of exciting.
When the pilot said that we needed to find a place to land, I know that he's a jokester, and so I thought it was just a good old, old-fashioned joke.
According to the pilot, the very first signs of struggle, he pulled the heat carb because he knows what it is and what's going on. But then big old chunk of ice got sucked in the engine and killed it.
The single-engine Cessna 175 no longer has enough uplift to remain airborne.
So the very first thing that the pilot did was pull out his emergency book and went through kind of the procedures, making sure that he was dotting all of the I's, crossing all of his T's.
It wasn't until a few seconds later, after he was going over some checklists and figuring things out, that I asked him, are we really going to land out here? And he said, yes.
Are we really going to land out here?
And that's when I knew we were in trouble and that it wasn't a joke.
But right now, I'm just making this video. I love my family. I know we're going to be just fine.
I had no idea that Jonathan was videoing at the time.
I'm not worried. I think we're going to be just fine. In the airplane, when I say, I think everything's going to be okay, I was kind of more talking to myself. We are going to have to make an emergency landing somewhere.
And I was praying my heart out and hoping for the best, kind of anticipating the worst.
Well, right now we're looking for a place to land. We were looking for a straightaway that didn't have power lines next to it, that didn't look busy, but ultimately roads were too short, or there were power lines right next to him, and he didn't feel safe landing in those. Just got a prayer in our heart, and I think we're gonna be just fine. We picked a spot, and he said, all right, we're gonna land in a field right here.
He had done field landings in the past. I don't know about in the snow, but in the summer. And I felt he was in complete control, and I had 100% confidence and trust in him.
All right, we're gonna land the field right here.
The snow was sparkling. I remember seeing the sun glinting off the snow back at our faces, and it was beautiful. And then I relaxed.
I'm very casually filming with one hand and holding on to my son with the other. We touched down with our back wheels, but because of the snow, it immediately dug in.
And we went tail over fin.
It was really violent, really quick, and then it stopped.
I was so nervous for the sake of my child that all I could think about while we were spinning was, how am I going to get unbuckled?
Is everybody okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I got Jacob. He's fine.
After the plane settled, really, I was just in a daze of shock. I was just like, what just happened? This was not what I was expecting. My wife immediately is, where's my baby? And I say, I've got him in my hands.
Where's my baby? I had him.
He handed me the baby, and then he got out and picked up the phone.
Have just survived a crash landing, and I'm still recording.
I was so upset. I wanted to be comforted, and he was still taking a video.
So after I gathered my wits and my stuff, I went over to my wife and I jokingly asked her, so are you ever gonna fly again? expecting her to say no. Kara, are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you gonna ever fly again?
Yeah.
She very cheerfully said, yeah, sure. And at that point, I, for some reason, just kind of started laughing. I knew that we'd be fine.
Jonathan.
I didn't expect that. Apparently that was a little too soon for my wife because she asked me to stop.
No, I've been.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Kara's 7-month-old son is checked out by medics at the scene. They reassure her that he emerged from the horrifying crash landing unscathed.
He really was kind of a miracle baby that he was held in my arms and that he was okay.
In fact, the pilot had brought the plane down in extreme conditions without any major injuries to his passengers.
Here's the hero. The pilot is very experienced and he's been flying for decades. Given the situation and how little time we had to take an action, I think the outcome was the best that we could have hoped for.
His plane, however, was a total write-off, and unfortunately, it was widely reported that his insurance had lapsed just hours earlier.
The only tragedy in this whole event, unfortunately, was that the pilot lost his plane.
Flight VS-43 from London to Las Vegas was aborted shortly after takeoff when its undercarriage mechanism failed. The Boeing 747 is now circling over Gatwick as technicians at the airport assess the scale of the damage.
The plane did a very low pass over the airport, at a slight tilt if I remember rightly, and I was later informed that this was so that they could inspect the undercarriage.
The team on the ground realise one section of the landing gear has not lowered. The plane may have to land without the wheels beneath its right-hand wing. On board the plane are Stacey and Dean Turner with their 3 daughters, all anxiously waiting for news from the pilot.
Then he actually came over the tannoy and said, right, we've lost the wheels on the right-hand side.
Everybody thought that, you know, things could really go wrong and we might never get off this plane. So I sent my brother-in-law, Ben, I sent him a text just saying, you know, tell everybody in the family that we love them very much if you don't see us again. You know, and then obviously that text went, and then after that they stopped us from communicating.
Ben gets in touch with his father, Norman, who has been anxiously following the flight path online.
I got a very strange text off my son, Ben. He said, is there something wrong with the flight? And I said, yeah, there is a problem, but I don't really know what, but it must be on the news, on the TV, if there's a problem. So I actually put the news on at the time, and there it was. There was a flight on the news, to my absolute horror. It was so hard to believe. My daughter and Dean and the grandchildren were on that plane I was watching at the time. It was unbelievable.
As the news spreads, Jack's vantage point at the end of the runway is becoming increasingly busy.
I was there for quite a substantial period of time, alone. And then I saw a man running across the field towards me, and I assumed it was security or police, perhaps, telling me to go away. But it wasn't. It was a Daily Mirror photographer with his big camera. And then someone else turned up with their camera, and then another man stood in the field with his camera. And then I looked behind me, and there were vans everywhere. News camera vans, media people, like getting up step ladders and things like that.
Back on the plane, the Turner family are all coping with the stress in their own different ways.
Because Maisie, our youngest, was asleep. Kenya, our eldest, was burying her head in the sand and watching films. And Ellie, the middle one, was convinced we were all going to die. So she was really, really upset.
She was hyperventilating as well.
It was horrible. It was, you feel like you've put your children in this position, you're taking them on holiday, and you just look at them and think, what's the outcome going to be? You feel responsible, really, but also at the same time, you feel like you have to put on a brave face. Because if they see the parents scared, that's going to make them even more scared.
Yeah, it's not good looking back, is it?
I can remember listening to this bit thinking, really?
The captain speaks to Boeing and is advised that his only option is to fly the plane in a bouncing action in an effort to free the wheels so they will drop into place.
You try to shake it off. You know, if something's not working, you shake in order to allow the gear to fall down, and that's usually how the system of the gear works. You know, it mechanically kind of falls down and then hooks into place. And that's what they were trying to do.
It was one of the most horrific things I've ever experienced. He did it to a point where you thought the plane was going to turn upside down. There was a few shouts out then, and
people screaming, weren't they?
yeah, that was really scary. You hear people crying.
People crying, yeah.
And that didn't work either. And that was the point that he said, right, we've exhausted everything. We're going to have to perform an emergency landing. And then
that was it. You
everybody
knew you were coming
just...
in. There was no way out of it. It wasn't going to be a happy landing.
September 2014, Los Angeles, USA. Artist Jason Luag is heading to Long Beach Airport for a flight to Texas.
So I was going to Austin for a convention. It was one of the first times I'd ever really sold my art anywhere. So I was really excited.
He's flying with JetBlue. In fact, he's such a regular customer of the airline that he's earned enough loyalty points to bag this flight for free.
So what happens usually when you find a Long Beach, like other small airports, is you get dropped off and you go through security. Probably had to wait like 20 minutes to get onto the plane.
Jason is flying in an Airbus A320, one of the most popular jetliners of all time.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard.
Takeoff was normal. Nothing really stood out as being wrong. And then we turned around, and as we were banking left, I saw out of the corner of my eye like a bright flash, and we heard it. That's when the engine exploded.
The JetBlue plane's engine has suffered a catastrophic failure.
Flight 1416 was climbing through 9,000 feet when the right-hand engine suffered a fatigue fracture of the lug that holds the turbine blades in place, and it released the two turbine blades into the engine. The pilots shut the engine down and levelled off at that altitude.
The damaged V2527 engine is now on fire, producing a new peril for the 147 people on board.
And then the cabin started filling up with smoke, and it started to smell. If I were to describe it, it would probably be like if your clutch burned out in your car. Just a weird, not normal, out of the ordinary smell that you don't expect, like in a plane.
Smoke is a significant danger to passengers because it typically contains a lot of toxic fumes.
Smoke sweeps through the cabin. The passengers start to panic.
The masks didn't come down. A lot of people were getting a little bit worried as to why they weren't coming down, especially with the smoke filling the cabin. So the flight attendants came down the aisles and they manually had to drop the masks.
As the attendants walk through the cabin releasing the masks, passengers start to turn on the crew.
Some of the people were kind of rude to them because the masks didn't come down fast enough.
Typically, if smoke is in the cabin, the instruction is not to deploy the oxygen masks because that could feed a fire.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a right engine failure. Shut down the engine. We're headed back to Long Beach at this time. Please stay in your seats and we'll try and clear the cabin as well as we can. Thank you.
The cabin crew correctly assessed that the fire was in the engine, not in the cabin, and they were concerned about the condition of the passengers inhaling these toxic fumes, so they lowered the masks manually.
This is the cabin crew's job. We just read the cards, they actually do it. The staff and crew of JetBlue were amazing. I don't think that they got enough credit for what they did. The flight attendants were calm, collected, and they took care of us.
The passengers can now at least breathe easily, but they are still several thousand feet in the air with a failed engine.
Well, I was thinking, okay, emergency exit is over here. We're over water, I know that. So I was basically trying to prepare myself for anything that I could think of.
Clear for landing, we'll be on the ground momentarily.
After they made the announcement that we were turning back, It got really quiet. We knew we were going to go back to the airport and land, but you don't really know how the landing's going to be. You know, you can't really expect it to go well after what just happened.
Virgin Atlantic Flight VS43 is making its final approach to Gatwick Airport. 447 terrified passengers have been on the plane for nearly 2 hours, as the jetliner circled over the south of England, emptying the fuel tanks and attempting to lower the undercarriage. The pilot has now exhausted all options for dropping the damaged landing gear, so he is about to attempt to bring down the 747 with one set of wheels jammed out of position.
So they talked us through what would happen, that as we were coming in, the pilot would shout, brace, brace, brace. And they showed us how to do the brace position.
You will hear, this is an emergency evacuation.
And that, to me, when I went numb, really.
Yeah.
I lost all feeling.
Counting down maybe the end of your life, wasn't it?
But you didn't, you just
kept looking at people.
And everyone was looking at you, and you were all thinking the same thing, but there was no one hysterical. It was silent.
Well, it was just pure
all
silence, because no one knew what was. You're just waiting to see what was going to happen next.
I can remember thinking it can't be.
And then they told us to get in the position.
They shouted brace, brace, brace really loudly over the tannoy.
Brace, brace.
Jack is filming the emergency landing from a spot at the end of the runway.
There was definitely an air of excitement, but as an aircraft neared the airport, it turned into worry, and people were terrified as to what might happen.
And when they were coming into land, myself and my wife didn't say a word. We never spoke one word. We just sort of gritted our teeth, and like we were on the plane, like we were actually on the plane with them.
And you're coming down, you could see the horizon coming down and down and down. You were getting really close.
I could very clearly see that only 3 of the 4 sets of wheels were down. I was thinking, the weight of that thing, is it going to manage on 3 sets of wheels? And I really thought it wouldn't, to be honest.
And then we hit.
When the aircraft landed, bounced up in the air, and for a brief moment we thought, blimey, what's happening? And eventually it seemed like an eternity, but it was probably a second or two. The aircraft came back down onto the runway.
We didn't seem to brake for ages, so...
Just running along, weren't we?
As when you're on a plane, usually you can feel the pressure of the plane.
The brakes
braking.
coming on.
You didn't get that, and I remember hearing someone actually shouting, stop, stop.
Stop, stop.
Because it did feel like you were just going to carry on.
It felt like he'd come down, it would hit the floor,
and
we were just carrying on.
The nose wasn't going down. It was as if he kept it up or something wasn't right.
Well, he had no wheels, he had no brakes, did he, on one side, so he was having to do it very controlled.
And I did think, we're not going to stop.
Then suddenly it started to tilt, and it looked like the end of a wing was going to actually hit the runway, in which case we thought this could lead to quite a horrible situation, because fuel is stored in the wings of an aircraft.
But the wing missed the ground by about a metre, and the plane stopped safely just short of the end of the runway.
That's it, they're safe now. That was, brilliant.
Well, everybody started clapping and shouting. Yeah,
crying and hugging each other, and they weren't even with each other, were they? Some of them, and they were... it was brilliant.
It was just absolute relief.
It was like watching a movie. It was one of the strangest, most surreal things I've ever seen in my life. But it all had a happy ending.
In this particular case, they did a phenomenal job by, keeping it level, and that's the goal. That's what you're trying to do.
The passengers on the 747 have been through a terrifying ordeal, but 7-year-old Maisie Turner slept through the whole thing.
When we'd actually stopped and people had done the cheering, and Maisie sat up and looked out the window and she could see all the bright lights, and she said, "Are we in Las Vegas, Mummy?" And I said, "No, we're back in Gatwick."
The passengers disembarked from the plane more than an hour later.
I took a picture of it as I was getting off, and I stood back and I saw some people were taking pictures, so I got my phone and I took a picture. I remember thinking, did that really just happen?
The flight is rescheduled for the next day, but the girls just don't feel up to it.
I can't put them through this. It's going to be horrific because once they're there, they're not going to enjoy the holiday because they're going to have to get on a plane to come home.
No, you have to come back.
And it wasn't going to be good. It wasn't going to be fun. And so the best thing we could have done was just get in the car and come home, really, which we did the next day. We stayed over, had a breakfast and went home.
Done another 6 hours travelling.
July 2014, Toronto, Canada. Assistant head teacher Vincent Spadaro is heading off for a taste of summer sun in Central America.
It was our vacation and a chance to go to a country I had never been to before, so it was intended to go see Panama for a holiday.
For Ontario lawyer Phil Thompson, this journey is a mixture of business and pleasure.
I was taking this flight because I own property in Panama, and I had a meeting that afternoon with the Smithsonian Institute.
The mood on the airplane at takeoff was jovial, it was happy, people were going on a vacation.
The plane takes off as planned from Toronto Pearson Airport, but the problems start as soon as the crew move through the cabin with the drinks trolley. One particular passenger is not happy about the price of refreshments. Phil is sitting just 4 rows in front of him.
I was listening to him order a pop from the stewardess. He was a little upset about the price of the pop. He was commenting that he didn't think it was fair to be charged $3 for a can of Coke.
While Vincent is sitting 3 rows behind the unhappy Sunwing customer.
I did overhear the flight crew member say to him, "Sir, please calm down, please stop swearing. There are children on board the aircraft."
The mood on board the 737 is becoming increasingly tense. Then the passenger starts complaining about his duty-free purchases.
He said, "I don't like that I had to pay tax on my cigarettes. Why do I have to do this if it's tax-free?" And she tried to steer him back to the conversation by saying, "You know, sir, I'm just handing out headsets here. I'm not concerned about what you bought in duty-free." And this is when he said, "You know what? I just want to bomb Canada."
I thought to myself, that's kind of a strange thing to say on a flight. Nowadays, you shouldn't really speak that way out loud.
I was completely numb in shock. I could not believe, again, somebody in this day and age would be talking like this.
And it was at that point that I looked at my friend, he looked at me, and we both realized something isn't right.
The captain decides that this passenger represents a serious risk and opts to divert the flight.
He said at times, aircraft receive threats and the industry take this very seriously. As a result, the decision has been made to return to Toronto. Of course, people were not very happy about that, but at the same time, you have to reflect and think that this is probably a good decision based on their experience and hopefully their expertise and their judgment.
Toronto-based security expert John Thompson follows events on Flight 772 as they unfold.
Well, the first responsibility of the pilot is the safety of the aircraft and everybody on it. So you can't expect them to go into the cabin and deal with an unruly passenger, especially if you consider things. You might have only 2 people on the aircraft who are qualified to fly it. And if they're both in a fight with somebody acting up, they've just endangered everyone else on the plane. That's their main responsibility.
The plane has already reached American airspace by the time the pilot decides to return to base. The US authorities take no chances and scramble F-16 fighters to escort the jetliner back to Canada.
You could see them outside the window, the left side of the plane, look out the right side of the plane. So we knew something was up.
We were not aware that there was F-16s escorting the plane back to Canada out of US airspace. It would have been kind of neat to know that they were there, as it would have been pretty cool to see them.
The fighter jets were a concern because, you know, they can shoot you down. You know, if they're given permission, it's a pretty serious situation.
Well, remember, ever since the Lockerbie bombing in 1988, we've learned that if an aircraft is destroyed in midair over a built-up area, over a town or a city, the loss of the aircraft can also cause a lot of casualties on the ground. So now, if an aircraft is hijacked over our airspace, there will be a fighter plane behind it. And if it starts to go someplace where it shouldn't, then we're in a position where we can make a decision about what to do about it.
Following a bomb threat from a passenger, Sunwing Flight 772 is escorted by fighters out of US airspace, setting it on course for a full-scale military response at the airline's Ontario base. JetBlue Flight 1416 suffered a catastrophic failure to its right engine shortly after takeoff from Los Angeles. Toxic smoke swept through the cabin. After the crew lower the oxygen masks, the passengers prepare themselves for an emergency landing.
I think the mood in the plane got a little bit more tense. That's when I really started to hear the creaking of the engine, because it got pretty quiet.
The pilot announces the final approach to Long Beach Airport.
Clear for landing will be underground momentarily.
And then all of a sudden you just hear brace for impact.
Brace.
And then the flight attendants were just yelling brace, brace, brace. They tell you to put your head down and hold on to your ankles, and yeah, everyone's heads are down. Just hold on to see what happens, you know? It was a good landing, you know? Like, there was nothing wrong, like nothing out of the ordinary. Everybody had like a huge sigh of relief and applauded the pilot. All right. There was a lot of commotion from other passengers, but I was just happy to be back on the ground.
Wait for instructions, take a seat.
The crew told us to remain seated, buckle your seatbelt, don't take anything out of the overhead compartments, you know, like we're still in a moving plane.
But not everyone on board is minded to follow the cabin crew's instructions.
Some of the passengers, once we landed, started to get a little anxious to get off the plane. And then that's when one person took it upon himself to open the emergency exit.
Before the plane actually reaches the terminal, a passenger opens a door and triggers an emergency evacuation.
Yeah, the guy that kicked the door open was like right over here. Once the emergency doors got opened, the slide inflated, and the pilot had to stop the plane. And that's when people started to freak out, because they thought something was wrong when there was really nothing wrong. The people that I saw injure themselves were injured after exiting the plane because of the guy kicking the slide open. Once I got off the plane, I actually had small shampoo bottles of alcohol, so I drank on the tarmac, and then made some calls, and then finally some buses came to take us back to the airport.
The passengers are bussed back to the terminal, where Jason faces a long wait.
I was more angry than anything about the guy kicking the door open. Because of that, I spent the entire day at the airport. I think I spent 11 hours at the airport because of him.
But he has no reservations about climbing back on board the replacement flight to Texas.
They say you're more likely to get struck by lightning twice than to crash in an airplane, right? So flying to me is still safe. My next flight to Austin was pretty much empty. There was about 10 of us on the plane, and we each all had our own row, and it was smooth sailing from there.
It's far from smooth sailing on Sunwing Flight 772. After a disturbed passenger threatened to bomb Canada, the 737 has been escorted by F-16 fighters out of American airspace and back towards Toronto, where the plane had started its journey. The jetliner makes a shockingly abrupt landing at the Canadian airport.
We came out of the sky like a manhole cover. We came down fast, and we landed hard with a very fast braking.
We were aware once we landed that we were not going to the terminal based upon what the captain said. We went off to a specific area on the tarmac.
The plane sat on a remote runway some distance from the main terminal building.
And the time frame was now an hour and a half sitting on the tarmac with no information. And again, repeated messages, please don't get up, please don't go to the washroom, please remain in your seats. And it was simply a waiting game.
I was expecting to see a couple of plainclothes police officers come on and escort the fellow off. Then a family sitting across from me that I had been talking to said, "Here comes the SWAT team."
Yo, what is happening?
They came on board and were screaming, "Hands up, heads down."
Heads down, hands up, hands up, heads down, hands up.
Most people took that pretty seriously. You know, they had guns and full equipment.
They boarded the plane very aggressively, yelling.
Hands down, hands up, hands down, hands up, hands up, hands down, hands up.
And I still feel to this point that the passenger, the disgruntled passenger, was not even aware they were coming for him.
Show me all your hands. Hands up. Hands up. Hands down. Hands down. Hands down. Hands down. Hands down.
Each of them were barking this instruction in unison, and so clearly we all did what we were told to do.
Hands down. Down.
You know, witnessing what I did, the SWAT team storming an aircraft with live ammunition, with machine guns drawn, I'm wondering what is going on. How did we get from what appeared to be a minor disruptive upset to an aircraft being stormed by the SWAT team?
Get down.
Mom's gonna be tripping.
They're trying to get everyone so that if they're not looking at the police, if their faces are down, they're obviously not planning an attack. And if the hands are up so they can see them, they're not holding a weapon. And so that was their immediate desire to try and control the whole plane. But of course, when the police come in that frame of mind, it's often a terrifying situation.
Hands up. Hands down.
Sam, don't get scared, chill.
Hands down.
Especially for people who've never been in it before. And I can tell you from personal experience, having someone yelling at you while holding a gun is a little unsettling.
Head down.
The SWAT team moved quickly to restrain the young passenger who spoke about bombing Canada.
It only took a millisecond for him to realize that they were there for him. They had him up and out of his seat and cuffed before he knew what was going on.
They grabbed him and threw him down and handcuffed him. And the rest of the SWAT team, you know, were all in their position in action if anything else was to occur.
He was cooperating, he was sobbing, he was crying, he was saying, I'm sorry, and he clearly was just as shocked as everyone else.
In this day and age, there's a lot of threats going on, and you just have to go with it and put the safety procedures, into the process. Today's, world is a different world than we all grew up in.
I think the whole thing was out of proportion. I don't think we needed two F-16 fighter jets. I don't think we needed a SWAT team. The guy was having a temper tantrum. I'm sure every Canadian thinks that the prices of everything in Canada are too expensive. He just stepped over the line by saying about the plane blowing up.
The police have to make sure that they win every engagement, that they control every engagement. That's the nature of the business. And when you come face to face with it, it can be quite unsettling.
The authorities searched the plane, but no offensive weapons were discovered. The passenger was later revealed to have mental health issues.
He entered into the legal system. It was deemed that he was mentally ill. As far as I know, that he's been getting the treatment he needs and is more or less a stable and predictable member of society, but I don't think he'll be able to get on board an international flight anytime soon.
And Panama-bound holidaymakers he had originally shared the flight with didn't get back on board very quickly either.
It was going to be a long day. Our flight was supposed to land in Panama at noon. We never left Toronto again until, I think, shortly after 3 o'clock that afternoon.
The second flight was, frankly, another disaster. Flying south after a few hours, someone came on the public address system and asked if there were any doctors on board. It turns out there was a medical emergency.
Flight 772 was diverted to Jamaica. The unfortunate Sunwing passengers eventually arrived in Panama about 15 hours late.
Everyone understands there are delays, there may be issues and problems, but we could have flown to Europe and back how many times? 4, 5 times? The compensation from the aircraft, I believe, was a $100 certificate for your next journey. Makes you wonder.
Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
I thought I was going to die. I really thought I was going to die.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
Went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
From great escapes...
Run, it's gonna blow.
...to mad moments. And highway robbery.
This is now going to cost you £24,000.
To highway landings.
Holy... It's definitely something they don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
And we reveal exclusive footage new to television. So keep your seatbelt fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights, a terrifying mid-air smash 12,000 feet over Wisconsin.
Like a war zone in the sky. You have shrapnel everywhere, you have metal everywhere, you have people everywhere.
The sickening end to a sky-high love pact.
Not many girls get to say they got proposed to up in the air. I thought that would be romantic.
And the horror of engine failure over Australia's shark-infested western seas.
I lifted the window shade and all I could see was water, and so at that point I thought, we're definitely going to die.
November 2011, New Jersey, the United States of America. Boxing promoter Greg Cohen is on his way to Moscow via Warsaw for a world title fight. It's an evening departure from Newark Airport. And business as usual for the seasoned air traveler.
Routine check-in, got on the plane, everything was going according to plan, smooth takeoff, just another day at the office.
On the same flight is New York resident Alexander Ryshkar, on a mercy mission to visit his seriously ill brother in their native Poland.
Last minute flight was from Newark, which I bought a ticket and get on. It was good weather, everything was perfect.
Because we're flying to Europe, it's a night flight. You pretty much try to sleep on those kind of flights.
It seems like a routine takeoff from Newark Airport for the 221 passengers. But there is a critical malfunction to the control system which lowers the Boeing 767's wheels.
They suffered a center hydraulic pressure failure. However, it didn't affect the capability of being able to fly a long-distance flight. The captain decided to continue the flight on to Warsaw because if they had to go back into Newark, it would have meant dumping lots of fuel.
Unaware the plane's undercarriage mechanism has failed, Greg sleeps peacefully as flight Lot 16 crosses the Atlantic. He wakes up about 2 hours before the scheduled arrival in Warsaw and soon realizes that there may be a problem.
You just kept seeing the flight attendants walking back and forth toward the cockpit and looking, a little nervous. And you could see it was like not normal commotion, there was a sense that something may be wrong.
The captain alerts the flight's destination airport, Warsaw Chopin, that the main system for lowering the aeroplane's wheels has failed. Wojtek Rohodzinski is the duty officer, the man with ultimate responsibility for preparing the airport for a potential emergency landing of the aircraft and its unsuspecting passengers.
The pilot reported an issue regarding the plane's landing gear.
As the plane gets closer to Warsaw, the pilot tries to lower the landing gear using the backup system. This should allow the wheels to drop under their own weight.
Went to make approach, got to the normal position where they would drop the gear by using manual freefall, the alternate system. Unfortunately, the gears didn't come down.
Both undercarriage deployment mechanisms have now failed.
The issue is bigger than expected and calls for an emergency action plan.
The clock is ticking as the 221 passengers on Flight 16 face the terror of an emergency landing in a near 200-ton plane without any wheels. November 2013, a beautiful autumn day in North Wisconsin. Dozens of skydivers have been jumping safely throughout the day at the Richard I. Bong Airport on the outskirts of the city of Superior. As the sun starts to set, 9 of the most experienced skydivers gather for one last run. Amy Ebling, a veteran of nearly 500 jumps, joins a 2-plane formation skydive.
There's a lot more risk involved when you're flying 2 planes simultaneously and trying to coordinate 4 jumpers in the lead plane, 5 jumpers in the chase plane, getting everyone out to exit at the same time, but then also coming together and having that many people in the air. So we reserve this sunset load, this formation load, just for experienced jumpers to really get one last good jump in for the day. And at sunset over Lake Superior, it's absolutely stunning.
Amy and her fiancé Chad are in the trail plane, which follows behind the lead plane, keeping that aircraft and its jumpers in clear sight.
As we were preparing to exit the aircraft and jump, we were flying at about 12,000 feet, which is pretty typical for the drop zone.
Mike Robinson is in the lead plane, which is usually about 100 feet in front of Amy's trail plane.
So we were just taking our position. My 3 partners were already totally out of the airplane when the trail plane came over the top and hit us.
Everything happened very quickly.
After the collision, Amy's plane explodes into flames.
It was just very confusing. This is Chad's video. Like, that's me. My pilot screams, "Go! Get out of the plane now." That's his blood-curdling scream. So I didn't hesitate. I pulled myself out as fast as I could. We didn't know we were upside down either until we watched Johnny's video. It sends chills down my spine to this day.
We could hear the propellers kind of chewing into our airplane. As our wing came over, it pinned one of the jumpers. He hung on as long as he could, and then the forces were just too great, and he let go.
Amy and Chad are the last 2 jumpers out of the trail plane, but the sky they have escaped into is now a place of deadly menace.
It was like a war zone in the sky. You have 2 planes that just collided. You have shrapnel everywhere. You have metal everywhere. You have pieces on fire. You have people everywhere. You have to make sure that not only do you get far enough away from the plane crash and the debris, but also that you have clean airspace to open your parachute.
All of the skydivers from Mike's plane escape from the burning wreck, but the pilot is still trapped inside as it hurtles towards the ground.
All that was left was the fuselage. It's got nothing to hold it up. It's just going straight to the ground. The pilot of our airplane, he is wearing an emergency parachute. And if you look at the videos really close, you can just see a little speck coming out the door at the same time the left wing came off. So that's the time he left the aircraft.
Amy is counting the seconds as she tries to get far enough away to avoid debris from the stricken planes, but still high enough to safely open her chute.
Those were the longest 48 seconds of my entire life. And then what happens when I pull my parachute? Is it gonna work, you know? It's still a normal skydive, so my equipment can still malfunction. It just goes quiet. Their parachute's open. Once my parachute was open, I kind of assessed myself and figured out my equipment's good. Am I good? Can I land? I wasn't to the ground yet. This wasn't over, so I was still very much prepared to fight if I needed to.
As Amy approaches the drop zone, she spots her fiancé amongst the jumpers who have already landed.
Chad was the first one to the ground, and I landed shortly after him and right next to him. And I remembered I was on all fours, and I immediately started sobbing. I was still convinced that I had seen several of my friends die. You know, I didn't know who was where. I didn't know where my pilots were. I didn't know where the debris was. I didn't know where the planes were.
Mike is the last of the skydivers to land, but they still don't know what has happened to the pilot of Amy's trail plane.
I heard this noise up above me, and it was a really odd noise. And I could tell the engine was not running right. I looked up, and it took me a while, but I realized that was our second airplane. Hang in there, Blake. Still flying. Given what happened to our plane, I could not believe he could still fly that airplane.
The skydivers on the ground rush over to be in position to help their friend after he makes his landing.
We grabbed the drop zone truck and piled into the back of it.
Is everybody down?
And flew down to the runway in the truck to make sure that if he needed attention, we were there for him. That one landing had to be the landing. That had to be perfect. And it was. He jokes to this day that it was one of his best landings.
You could not recreate this kind of a crash and have this good of an outcome ever, I don't think. We all feel very fortunate to be alive.
But this near-death experience has done nothing to diminish Amy's passion for her sport.
There was never a question in my mind that I wouldn't skydive again. So the accident didn't change my perspective on skydiving, but it absolutely changed my perspective on life. So it renewed this insane passion to live unapologetically enthusiastic about life.
In fact, when she and fellow survivor Chad finally tie the knot in 2014, there is only one place they would choose to hold their wedding.
Chad and I got married out of a plane. We had a boogie at the drop zone. We called it Till Death Do Us Party. We invited our friends from all over the world. Chad and I kissed for the duration of our free fall, and we broke off, pulled our parachutes safely, and landed. It was kind of like it came full circle. Nice job.
Flight Lot 16 is circling above Poland with a fast-depleting fuel tank and its undercarriage jammed up. The Boeing 767 suffered a critical malfunction to its central hydraulic system during takeoff from Newark. The landing gear's manual backup then failed as the plane approached Warsaw's Chopin Airport. The Polish authorities scramble F-16 fighters to check what's going on with the wheels beneath the ailing jetliner. The passengers still don't realize the danger they are in.
I noticed a jet right outside the plane. I said, oh my God, I have to take a picture because it's great. You know, he's right next to us, and I had to get up because my camera was in the overhead locker. I picked up the camera. When I sit down, he was gone. I said, oh, too bad. I will have a nice picture of the jet flying next to the regular plane.
The news is not good. The fighters confirm that none of the 767's wheels are down.
The only thing they told us is that we're going to be making an emergency landing. And we kept circling and circling and circling. And, you know, we were literally just waiting for information.
The captain had to burn off as much fuel as possible because obviously he's going to be landing without wheels. There's going to be a lot of sparks and probably flames as well.
Before attempting a life-threatening emergency landing, the captain makes one desperate last effort to lower the wheels.
At one point, the plane lost the engine, and we were like falling down. I got scared. I started thinking, oh my God, it's my time. Thinking about my 2 daughters in New York and my 3 grandchildren in New York. And I shed a few tears.
These sudden descents are actually the pilot attempting to jolt the undercarriage into place.
The only thing they could try to do was to make an up and down sharp movement to the aeroplane to see if they could dislodge it and make it come down. Obviously it was jammed, so it couldn't come down.
The pilot finally announces to the passengers he's been unable to lower the undercarriage. And the plane will be making an emergency landing without any wheels.
It got to the point where I got to reach out to my family. And at that point, I got my cell phone out and I text my wife that we're making an emergency landing. I'm sorry to have to text you this. I love you so much and our children so much, and God forbid if something were to happen, you needed to know. And just in case the wrong thing happened, I wanted my wife and kids to know how much I love them, and it was definitely emotional.
As the pilot prepares for a landing without landing gear, the ground team at Warsaw Chopin Airport moved the fire engines into position and put one final safety measure into place.
We sprayed a layer of foam on the 3-kilometer-long runway.
The plane starts to make its final approach.
As we're coming in, they're giving our instructions and telling us, brace for impact, get ready, get ready, get ready.
Seatbelt fastened. We all were thinking that we're gonna probably crack in half or lose the wings.
I'm just praying that things are going to end up okay.
February 2017, Fresno, California. Daryl Hamilton Jr. and Rihanna Lopez have been together for 3 years. But now he thinks it's time to take the next step. And what better place to pop the question than high above the lush landscape of California's Central Valley.
Rihanna and I really love taking pictures and scenic outdoor shots, and I just thought the perfect view for her would be something memorable. And not many girls get to say they got proposed to up in the air with a nice view, so I thought that would be romantic.
Daryl gets in touch with a pilot at his local airport and arranges a very special flight for the lovebirds. The destination? A sign he will build himself, asking Rihanna to marry him.
We arranged a time and a date and schedule, and I told him if we can fly over that sign. As soon as she sees it, I was going to ask her, and he was very willing to help me.
So, early on the morning of the planned proposal, Daryl sets off to his cousin's house to prepare his man-sized love note to Rihanna.
I kind of carved "Marry Me" in the grass. It was probably the size of like 2 vehicles, so it took me about an hour, hour and a half to make that sign. I took a picture of the sign before I left. I don't know why, but like when I got closer to the house, I kept looking at the sign, and I remember thinking to myself, wait, Mary, instead of M-A-R-R-Y, marry me, I put M-E, and just was thinking, well, maybe she can get a joke out of it, it can be funny. But yeah, I did notice after it was too late that I had spelled Mary wrong.
The whole project hasn't begun very well, but at least the weather's on Daryl's side.
We had a lot of rain, so the landscape was really green. He just said, do you want to go take pictures for the day? And I was like, okay. So we did that, and then all of a sudden he says, hey, there's an airport over here. Let's take some pictures of the plane. And I'm like, okay, that's a little weird, but whatever.
I don't think she had time to be suspicious because it was really last minute. And when we had gotten there, she was really caught off guard, and she really didn't know what to think.
So he started going into the airport, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think we're supposed to be in here. Like, this is not right. And he starts following this guy into the airport, and I'm like starting to get upset because I'm like, we're gonna get in trouble for being in an airport. Finally, I realized that he knows this person, and the guy comes out of his car and he's like, so we're gonna be taking a flight today. And I'm like, wait, I don't understand what's going on. I'm a little confused. We always do random things like that. So I really thought this was like a Valentine's Day gift, and this is what we were just doing.
Video journalist Daryl has rigged the plane with cameras to document every moment of the proposed proposal.
I wanted to capture her reaction once she saw the ring, if she would cry, if she would be in awe.
But novice air passenger Rihanna's first reaction is one of terror.
So this was only like my really second time, plus it was a smaller plane, so it was a little scary. My stomach was kind of in knots a little bit, because I have a little bit of fear of heights. So at first, I just kind of looked straight ahead. And then as soon as we kind of got in the air, when I did look down, it looked so fake that it almost like didn't seem real. So it made me kind of feel more at ease.
Rihanna may be at ease now, but she's in for one of the most sickening moments in aviation history before she gets her feet back safely on the ground again. November 2011, Warsaw, Poland. Polish Airlines flight Lot 16 has been circling over the city for over an hour, attempting to lower its undercarriage. The pilot has now exhausted all options for dropping the landing gear and depleted nearly all the fuel in the aircraft. So the Boeing 767 and its 221 passengers are now making their final approach to the airport.
We're getting closer and closer to the runway. You could see there are fire trucks lining both sides of the runway. There's that white foam that they put on the runway. And you understand the gravity of the situation.
A huge aircraft was approaching with no landing gear. It was hard to imagine how this huge airframe was going to behave.
I'm waiting for this crash. I've been in a car accident before. I'm waiting for this impact.
Will
it smash apart when it touches the ground? Or slide gracefully on the foam-covered runway and stop?
Spokojnie pojedzie do przodu I wyhamuje bezpiecznie.
It was actually one of the smoothest landings I've ever had.
But the passengers are not out of danger yet.
Słychać było oczywiście po wylądowaniu.
We could hear metal rubbing across the surface of the runway.
I see that engines are scraping the runway. There's some sparks coming on and smoke. Then I said, oh, no. We are on the runway with the belly.
The pilot, Tadeusz Wrona, manages to keep the plane on a smooth course through the foam-covered runway, and the flames die down.
The captain has to try and put that aeroplane down very, very gently on both engines, because they're the ones that are going to make contact first at the same time, while keeping the aeroplane straight down the center of the runway. And miraculously, it came to a halt without any flames or any fire. I have to say, he did a fantastic job.
Plane comes to a stop, everybody's cheering. That lasts for a couple of seconds, and you just see these flight attendants, and all of them are saying, "Get off this plane now."
And the people start running. And when I want to get up, somebody always push me back, because boom, I want to get up. Boom, somebody running. And I said, oh my, I finally have to get up and run. Then when I get up and I start running, they said, jump, so I jump. Those guys who were there, they was going, run, it's gonna blow up, run, it's gonna blow up. And it seemed like everybody was running, and I was kind of running too.
You see, you know, all these fire trucks hosing the plane down, and you see everybody coming, and that's when you really realize, like, oh my God, what a close call this really was.
Within 90 seconds, all the passengers were evacuated from the plane. We knew we'd done a good job when all the passengers were safe.
Alec and Greg get far enough away from the plane to take stock of the situation.
I said, oh my God, we are safe. I think I taped it. I said, oh, I'm alive, I'm alive.
The first thing I did after running across the runway to a safe distance away from the plane, I pulled out my cell phone to call my wife. As soon as I heard her voice, I mean, you know, my voice cracked, and you know, it was just an outpouring of emotion and something, you know, it's very hard to describe unless you experience something like that. But it was a great call, you know, and I'm a very lucky man to have such a good family.
The passengers are loaded onto buses and driven to the terminal building.
We are among people who did survive, now happy, shaking hands, hugging, good. That's it. I'm alive.
It definitely keeps things in perspective. You know, you realize, you know, what's important. I mean, I think ice cream tastes a little sweeter. You know, the sunshine feels a little better. You notice the little things, and you don't take them for granted.
June 2017. Perth, Australia. Teachers Damien Stevens and Mitch Jameson are heading off for their mid-year break. The two of them are flying out from Perth Airport to Kuala Lumpur at the start of a holiday in Myanmar, formerly Burma, in Southeast Asia.
I guess we were looking for something a little bit different, not so touristy, and somewhere we could have a bit of an adventure.
Oh yeah, we were going to go dirty, go cheap and backpack our way around the country.
They decide to book with low-cost Malaysian-based airline AirAsia.
We thought the less money we spend on an airfare, the more money we can spend in country.
It's an early start after a late night for party animal Mitch.
We got to the airport about 4 in the morning. And yeah, when we got our boarding passes, went up for a coffee and just couldn't wait to get on the plane.
Like a lot of passengers, they don't listen to the pre-flight emergency instructions, as no doubt they should have.
You'd heard the safety briefing a million times before, so I mean, no one ever listens to it. So I was out like a light.
The Airbus 330 makes a routine takeoff from Perth en route to Malaysia and cruises up the western coast of Australia. But after only about 60 minutes, disaster strikes.
So I was in a pretty deep sleep, and there was a massive bang.
It was like nothing I've ever really experienced. I guess the closest thing I'd say it was like being right next to fireworks or something like that, like a really loud bang.
I looked around and everyone else was kind of looking around with quite panicked looks on their faces. The pilot wanted to lose a bit of altitude straight away, so that added to the sensation of that we were going to crash and we were probably going to die.
After the initial explosion, a stomach-churning vibration kicks in.
And straight away the shaking started, and it felt like you were sort of sitting on top of a washing machine or a compressor.
It was really loud, we couldn't talk, we had to yell at each other, and even when you spoke it was that violent, it would like move your voice as you were speaking as well.
The bone-shaking rattle is the result of a catastrophic failure to the left-hand engine.
It suffered a fracture of one of the turbine blades, which was ingested into the engine. The pilots immediately shut the engine down and started a descent. The shaking of an engine can cause considerable damage. In the case of the AirAsia X aircraft, the hydraulic system and the oil system detached from the engine itself, so it is a very serious issue.
And, chillingly for the 359 passengers on board, the plane is over open water in an area known as Shark Bay.
Mitch was near the window seat and he lifted the blind and sort of peeked out, and all we could see was oceans. We didn't really talk for about 3 or 4 minutes, I think. We just sort of sat there in silence. Quite, really, really frightened.
We're both pretty good swimmers, and I thought if we do land it okay, we'll be able to survive the swim. That's not an issue, but knowing that we'll be floating in water full of sharks for at least a couple of hours was a pretty big concern.
Typically, it is far safer to ditch in the ocean, if you can. However, the seas off Western Australia are notorious for the great white shark, with many fatalities over the last 4 or 5 years. So ditching at sea does come with some perils.
Mitch and Damien are 20,000 feet above the ocean off Western Australia. One engine of their plane has already failed. The other is struggling to keep the Airbus and the 2 teachers safely above the shark-infested waters. Photojournalist Daryl Hamilton Jr. has come up with an elaborate plan to pop the question to his girlfriend Rihanna Lopez. He made a sign asking her to marry him and then chartered a plane to fly her over his unfortunately misspelt love letter. It's only Rihanna's second time in a plane, but she's really getting into it. Daryl, on the other hand, is a bit overwhelmed by all the tech he has rigged to document his planned proposal.
Instead of just enjoying the moment, I was trying to capture it all, and just being on those gadgets is what really messed with me.
You could start to see the color kind of drain from his face, and so I did keep asking him, are you okay, are you okay? And he just kept saying, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, okay, yeah, but you could definitely tell he wasn't feeling good at all.
But everything still seems to be going to plan. All that is needed is Daryl's "Marry Me" sign.
What was going through my head was to hurry up and find the sign. So I was focusing on just trying to be steady. I remember closing my eyes and focusing for a minute. I was just really trying to hold it in as long as I could to keep myself together so I can ask Rihanna to marry me. Yeah, so after about 15 minutes on the plane ride, the pilot and I kind of linked eyes when we got closer, and he was kind of hinting at me, like winking and telling me, all right, we're here. So I kind of tried to hint her and say, hey, do you see anything outside? Is there anything out the window?
I didn't see it.
I kept asking, do you see anything? Do you see anything?
No.
And I was just, okay, I don't have time if she can't find it or not. I didn't have time. I grabbed every ounce of strength I could and just said, okay, I can't wait no longer. I just had to get it over with and hand her the ring.
He tapped me on the shoulder and I turned around and it was just right there in my face. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what's happening, I guess. So he immediately went down and started throwing up. So yeah, it was a little, I didn't even know how to react. I was just kind of like, wait, what's going on? You just gave me this ring and now you're, vomiting. So
she never really gave me an answer. I never asked, and she never really said yes. I guess the way I took her answer was just how happy she looked. So I just took that as a yes, really.
Confirmation came when Daryl put the ring on his new fiance's finger. Admittedly, the wrong one.
Yeah, so after I recovered myself, I think I put on her right hand first, and then after a few seconds, wait, wrong hand, and then I remember putting it on her left hand.
He placed it on my finger, and then we kind of did the little finger kiss because he didn't want to kiss me because he had just thrown up. So it was like just a quick little tap with the hands, and that was it, yeah.
And after the rather tentative first contact of their engagement, it's straight back to base and the security of solid Earth.
Well, the pilot asked us if we wanted to continue flying, and Daryl was like, no, can we just get on the ground as soon as possible?
I felt relieved. I felt just happy to be back on my feet, really.
Well, we're getting married soon. We don't have a date quite set yet, but we're definitely planning the wedding, and we'll make it happen.
How do I look back on that day? I guess memorable. Not many people get to say that they got to propose to their girlfriend up in the air. And I guess kind of funny, because not many people have thrown up. It's a funny story to tell, and we get to tell our kids and grandkids and family that, hey, remember when Daryl proposed to Rihanna? It's a good story to tell.
AirAsia Flight D7237 is limping home to Perth on just one engine over the shark-infested waters of Western Australia. Fearing the worst, passengers Damien Stevens and Mitch Jameson start to record what could be their last moments.
I guess I don't really know why we decided to make a little video. I guess a part of you thinks, what if this is the last communication you get? And Damo said that line that when we land, we're going to have 60 million beers, which is how we were both feeling.
Having 50 million beers when we get back.
I guess we sort of did it just to record what may or may not have happened, and also to show people back home what it was like, because the shaking, it was crazy, something like I've never experienced before.
The plane continues its bone-shaking return to Perth Airport. Eventually, the pilot comes over the intercom to share his concerns with the passengers.
I'm sorry about the vibration, there's nothing much I can do.
His announcements over the rest of the flight will only add to the growing panic of his 359 passengers.
I hazard to guess that the number one engine is seized and it's causing the vibration that we are feeling right now.
The pilot, the first thing he announced was that we'd had a technical issue and that we were returning to Perth.
We are going to Perth.
And keep an eye on the engines, and if we saw anything suspicious, to alert the flight crew straight away.
This sets up a fearful 2-hour journey home for the shaken passengers.
I guess with the pilot asking for our help made us feel like, this wasn't going to be an easy trip back, and that something else could definitely go wrong. And that made me wonder how long you could fly with just one engine, especially with that shaking. That must have made the second engine work twice as hard.
Yeah, obviously as soon as the word engine had been mentioned, we were petrified.
Then, about 30 minutes after the left engine failed, it seems the worst has happened.
The plane was shaking from as soon as the engine went, but it almost became sort of comforting, and you got used to the shaking. At one point during the flight back, stopped for about 40 seconds, and for me that was probably the most scary point in the flight.
The passengers on the Airbus fear that the right engine has also seized under the strain of keeping the plane aloft.
Yeah, it was perfectly silent, and everyone else, would look around sideways at each other because no one knew what was going on. So that was quite scary.
Thankfully, the second engine kicks back in and the flight moves back over land, to the great relief of those on board.
I guess when we sort of could see land, we felt a little bit more comfortable, although I don't really know why that was. We thought we could land on the highway in the northwest maybe, but that was our thought process at the time.
And then the captain chips in again with a jaw-dropping intercom appeal.
We had half an hour of shaking at this stage, and I guess we thought, well, we're going to keep going at this rate and shaking the whole time, so we weren't, in a mad panic.
I know you're all worried and back there. Me too.
The pilot came over the intercom and told us we needed to pray.
Let's pray together and make this a good landing for us all.
But for him to ask us to pray, we just thought, just lie to us. Tell us you've done this before. Tell us we're going to get home safe, because if we don't, then we're just going to die.
And I'm praying, I hope you are too.
I guess it spread a bit of panic throughout the plane and people were quite subdued. But he said it twice, and when it came the second time and he said he was scared as well, it was, yeah, we thought we were in a lot of trouble.
Let's hope everything turns for the best. God bless us.
The announcement by the AirAsia ex-captain of asking the passengers to pray was probably the most bizarre request ever made in aviation history. You've got a scenario where the passengers are terrified with the shaking of the engine, and then the captain comes on and says, "Pray for us." That was a fail.
Either the mile-high prayers or the design and testing of the Trent 772 engine on the right-hand wing does the job for the remainder of the flight. Mitch and Damien start to relax as the plane approaches Perth, but by now they are praying that the captain will keep his thoughts to himself. Then he pops up with another of his colourful communications.
We are now descending into Perth, and
so when we were approaching the airport, the pilot was pretty standard with his response. We were about to land at Perth Airport, and then he dropped in that we were going to have to brace.
Please do the brace position, lean forward and grab the ankle.
So that was a bit scary because we thought we'd made it by that stage.
And rest your forehead on your arm.
We could see out the window and we could see what was happening, and did see police and fire engines and all those emergency services at the airport. As soon as we landed and touched down, people were just ecstatic. Clapping and cheering and high-fiving, and it sort of continued on for the whole time we taxied along the runway.
The pilot has one final comment for his relieved passengers.
thank God for on the ground.
Thanks a lot.
And maybe you have prayed for us as well. Thank you. 367 hours on board today. 367 lives. Thank you.
And the two teachers have a chance to thank the man whose flying ability has brought them home safely, even if his communication skills left a little to be desired.
The pilot shook everyone's hand as we got off, which we thought was a really nice gesture, and personally I don't blame him. I think he was scared as well, and he obviously didn't follow procedure, but I think it's just one of those things, just human error.
I guess the pilot was a little too honest at times, but in the grand scheme of things, he got us home alive, and I was happy to shake his hand and thank him at the end of the flight.
Insofar as how AirAsia handled it on the ground, we got to the front of the line and there was no one at the desks for about 2 hours.
Just wanted to get it going on our holiday, and it just took forever.
The lads eventually took off for Kuala Lumpur nearly 20 hours after their original departure time. But with no shaking in sight and both engines in working order.
All our friends thought we were crazy for getting on another AirAsia flight. We were just happy to get on another plane and get going. We thought lightning can't strike twice, right?
The holiday was awesome once we got there. Myanmar's a great place, and we did some awesome hiking and trekking and different people with different bits and pieces, and the people were super friendly and certainly worth going. We'd go again.
Oh, don't do this to me.
Our friends and family were more concerned about it than us. We were just like, no, that's just life, get on with it. Like, you can't dwell on what could have happened because it didn't.
And Damien and Mitch have made a good start on drinking the 60 million beers they promised themselves when the future was looking bleak at 20,000 feet. Every year, more than 3 billion air passengers head for the skies. The vast majority return safely to Earth without incident. But a small number experience life-changing moments they will never forget.
It was like a war zone in the sky.
We hear first-hand accounts from the passengers and pilots who have lived through the most shocking extremes of air travel.
The plane just sunk like a stone and crashed into the ground.
From great escapes...
Run, it's gonna blow.
...to mad moments and crash landings without wheels.
We had no landing gear, so we're coming in for a belly flop landing.
Or runways. Holy...
It's definitely something I don't teach in driving schools, how to avoid a plane.
In the age of the smartphone, these events are caught on camera as never before.
Awesome.
We reveal exclusive footage never seen on television. So keep your seatbelt fastened for the world's wildest flights. In this episode of World's Wildest Flights, a deaf traveler's terrifying experience when a New York plane crashes.
There was so much smoke, and we couldn't see where the fire was coming from.
The passengers forced to pay for their own petrol to get home.
We felt we were being held to ransom.
And a pilot's close shave with death on a Reno runway.
I went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine.
September 2015, Las Vegas, USA. Ellie and Paul Wooldridge from Essex in England are in Las Vegas to celebrate both of their 50th birthdays. It's been the holiday of a lifetime.
We had a lovely time. David Copperfield, Cirque du Soleil, the Bellagio, fountains, everything. It was really good, really, really good.
Just an incredible place, and so we're not really looking forward to coming home, but you've got to come home at some point.
All parted out, the couple head to Las Vegas McCarran Airport to catch their British Airways flights back to the UK.
Everything was just fine. We were just sitting in the airport lounge, and I see the BA pilots come in, and I think, they must be ours. Didn't think no more of it. Little did I know he was going to be the man to save our lives.
Chris Henke, a seasoned pilot with over 40 years flying experience, is the captain of the Boeing 777 that day.
Well, it began, it was all fairly standard. The checks were fine, passengers boarded, I think we left on schedule. There was nothing untoward at all.
At 15:53, the plane pushes off from gate E3 and 157 passengers prepare for takeoff.
So we watched the safety talk on the video screen. Always take a bit of notice of that because you never know what's going to happen.
They tell you where the exits are, should you have to get off in an emergency. Mine was right behind me.
Once we left the gate, we just taxied out. It's a big airfield, Las Vegas, very big. So there wasn't hardly any traffic around.
You taxi onto the runway and you're literally just thinking about getting home. Seeing my dogs, seeing my kids. You sit there and you wait. There's always the way before they get their signal that they can go, and then you hear the engines.
And then we got clearance to take off.
The plane starts to accelerate down runway 07L. But after just a few seconds, it's obvious that something is very wrong.
And then all of a sudden, I felt a jolt.
There was a bang. Initially, we thought it might be a tyre had blown.
The plane sort of listed to the left bit, and so I immediately looked out the window, and I could see like flames and that on the runway. And I remember it was like the film Back to the Future, when the car takes off, leaves them two wispy flames. It was just like that in the runway.
At the point the pilot realises there's a problem, the plane is hurtling down the runway about 90 miles per hour. He needs to make a life and death decision, continue with one engine or abandon the takeoff. The The crucial factor is whether the plane has reached its V1 velocity.
V1 is a speed which is calculated before departure, depends on such factors as airfield elevation, temperature, weight of the aircraft, etc. After that speed, you'd still be able to continue with the takeoff run to achieve flying speed before the end of the runway and continue takeoff and flight on one engine. Prior to that, if you were to have an engine failure on a twin-engine aeroplane, you'd be able to stop.
The V1 speed for this aircraft in this location is about 180 miles per hour, so the pilot aborts the flight as soon as he realises there's a problem.
We would call stop and go through the actions, reverse thrust, brakes, and then you assess the situation.
The plane stops on the runway, but no one really knows what the problem is yet. It isn't long before the passengers start to panic.
You can hear the click, 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 click of all the seat belts. Everyone's getting up because they're wondering what's going on.
The stewardesses come down, sit down, it's only a burst tyre, it's fine, don't worry. So we're just sitting there and waiting.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated.
30 seconds later, just another boom, and the engine bursts into flames again. That's when panic set in, because basically you're sitting on a 300-ton bomb. Whatever the plane weighs with 12 hours worth of fuel on it, it's just a massive, massive bomb waiting to go off when it's on fire like that. So I just wanted to get off there as quick as we could.
The passengers in the cabin are aware of a fire raging in the engine, but the pilot can't see the blaze from the flight deck.
He may at a very stretch just be able to see the wingtips if he puts his head right up against the window, but he certainly can't see the engines at all.
The only way the captain can see what's going on is from the smoke which is now billowing out from the burning General Electric GE90 engine.
The only thing we could see was there's like a grey shadow because the sun was behind us, so we had no idea of the severity. But we had to do the check for the fire warning, which we did, and then I asked the other co-pilot to go back down the back. We could hear some screaming and shouting. Just to check out what was going on.
And then you see one of the pilots run down and he looks out the window and then he runs back.
He said, I believe it's bad, and I said, how bad? And he said, very bad. So from that, he's an experienced pilot, and if he thought it was very bad, then that's good enough for me, and it was time to get off.
And then all of a sudden it's emergency evacuation. I just started panicking, and I'm thinking, no, I want to see my kids. I'm not a nan yet. I want grandchildren. And I really thought that I was going to die, because you just think this plane is full up with fuel and there's a fire, it's just going to blow up.
September 2016, Reno, Nevada. The 53rd National Championship Air Races. Nearly 200,000 spectators flocked to see the fastest motorsport on Earth. But unbeknown to them, this year they will also witness one of the greatest escapes in air racing history. As a youngster, Swedish-born pilot Tom Richard dreamed of competing at the Nevada event.
When I was 7 years old, I read an article about the 1979 Reno air races. And I'd never heard of anything of the sort at that time, and thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and I decided that's what I'm gonna do.
At just 16, Tom took to the skies, working his way up through gliders, helicopters, and even vintage fighters. But his heart was always set on competitive racing.
Air racing is about the coolest thing you could ever do in an airplane, so it was a natural transition for me to strive in that direction. And I always tell people, be careful what you wish for, because it just might happen. And in my case, I ended up air racing in the Formula One class first in 2008. And it's been a tremendous ride and a ton of fun, and don't regret a second.
Founded in 1947, Formula One is the oldest pure racing class of aviation. Specially designed planes are very small and very fast.
It consists of very tiny airplanes. They weigh just over 500 pounds, so that makes them real hot rods. So we have a lap speed well over 250 miles an hour, 50 feet off the deck, racing around, trying to see who's going to finish first with your hair on fire. What could be better?
Tom got his first taste of success from the beginning, when his custom-built Formula One plane, Hot Stuff, was the winner of the first ever Air Race 1 World Cup in 2015, after placing at the top of the podium in Reno, Spain and Tunisia.
Hot Stuff is a one-of-a-kind, all-carbon fiber, custom-built air racer. It's not good at anything else, but it goes really fast. It's certainly not very comfortable. It's a very, very tight airplane. It's actually made around the body, and you just kind of snap your shoulders in place when you get in it. It's, you have an inch and a half to move your head either direction. If you're claustrophobic, it's probably not for you.
The following year, Tom is hoping for more success as he takes to the skies in Reno, racing Hot Stuff in the Formula One class. He's doing well in the preliminary rounds, but everything hangs on the final at the end of the racing week.
The entire week of Reno is the build-up to Sunday. It doesn't matter where you place through the week. The only thing that matters is where you finish on the day of the final.
Reigning Reno Formula One champion Steve Senegal is competing in his plane Endeavour.
Well, the Gold Final is the big deal. That is the finale of the race. I had been doing well. I had won the year before that, and so I was expecting to win this year as well.
Mark Takers is crew chief for Naughty Girl, another one of the planes lining up for the big race.
The Gold Final is a big deal. That's where all the bragging rights come from for the rest of the year. Everybody has tuned their airplane to the peak. Now's the time to put it on the table, and we all do.
I was in slot number 4, which was the second row on the left side. So I had 3 airplanes behind me, one on the left, one on the right, and one on the center line.
Naughty Girl is to the rear of Tom to the left.
Because we had some snags during the week, we had to start from the back row.
And Endeavour is just behind Hot Stuff.
I had been assessed a technical penalty in the race before, and so I ended up on the back row.
Once we're pulled out on the starting grid and we get a 10-minute warning, we're allowed to start the engine. So I'd started my engine probably at the 5 or 4 minute mark, and it seemed to be running okay.
And then at 2 minutes before the flag drops, all the crews have to vacate the runway. So we did. We got into our car. We all got in the right spot. The camera was rolling, and we were waiting for the start.
Once I got my engine running and revved it up, I realized it started cutting out. It was impossible to fly the engine like that. Obviously, it wasn't safe. I was forced to shut down and get myself out of the race. I simply just pulled the fuel, and as soon as the propeller stopped, that signals the flagman that I need to be pushed off to the side. Once I shut my engine down, I started opening my canopy.
Tom is out of the race and needs to be towed off the runway fast. The only problem is nobody told the starter at the top of the grid.
The plane came down, I gave it power, and I started rolling.
We see our aircraft start moving. We start accelerating the car that we are in to try to film him.
Much to my surprise, the airplane next to me started rolling. At that point, I realized that somebody had started the race. I raised my canopy as high as I could to make myself as visible as possible to the 3 airplanes behind me.
I race a tail dragger where the tail is down, the nose is up in the air, and it's blocking my vision ahead of me.
Noticed that Hot Stuff was not moving. In fact, had his canopy open, which is why I panned back to Endeavour.
I knew there were 3 airplanes behind, 2 fast starters on the outsides, and they flew by me pretty quickly. And then I heard the 3rd airplane coming up towards me, but I figured he would overlap my right wing. I did not think he was going to hit me.
As we start rolling, the tail comes up and I'm able to see the field in front of me. But it was a short time when I saw him until I hit him.
It was a loud bang, and I went on the wildest teacup ride you could ever imagine. I flipped a 180 on the runway, and all I could do at that point was just pull my arms in and try to protect my head. I knew I'd been hit. I didn't know how bad. I was just trying to stay still so I wouldn't hurt myself any worse.
I actually went over and spun around. But that was the only thing was going through my mind was, trying to control the airplane.
It was obvious Steve Senegal in Endeavour was fine. He just spun on the runway. Tom, on the other hand, was impacted by the gear, which made me fear for his head and well-being.
You okay? Back off!
My right hand was struck by his left wing, and it was a bit like getting hit by a baseball bat. That's what it felt like.
You all right?
My hand is hurt.
Okay.
I didn't want to take my glove off because I expected it to look like a bag of chicken parts, basically. So I crawled out of the harness and eventually got to the medics, and we took the glove off, and it turned out that I had a severely bruised and sprained hand, no broken bones at all.
I did see Steve running over to Hot Stuff. That was great to see. And I could see that Tom was nursing an arm, but he was walking by himself, so he seemed quite well as well, which is a heck of a relief for everybody.
Remarkably, neither of the pilots suffered any major injuries, but Hot Stuff wasn't so lucky.
My aircraft was hurt pretty bad. It received 3 or 4 slices from his propeller. The left land gear actually dislodged the entire wing from the fuselage. The top of the vertical was taken off by 3 or 4 inches. Then, of course, the canopy flew off the aircraft. For some miraculous reason, it didn't touch my propeller, somehow. And that was about the extent of the damages on my aircraft.
Unfortunately, Tom and his team were not able to compete in Reno in the 54th National Championship Air Races.
2017 will be the first year in 10 years that I'm not racing, because both my airplanes happen to be down for maintenance. So this year, you will see me in Reno, but I'm only going to be racing a golf cart.
But it won't keep him down for long. He'll be off the golf cart and soaring through the skies as soon as possible.
Accidents happen, whether it's aviation or something else, we always have to take risk. Every day is about risk. I choose to cross the street because I want to see what's on the other side. That's a risk I'm willing to take. I'm willing to race airplanes because of the rewards it gives me. And we'll build another airplane, we'll race another day, that's the point, right?
July 2013, Nashville, Tennessee. Aidan Mack, deaf blogger and entrepreneur, is on her way back to New York after an expo in Florida. Her connecting flight at Nashville International Airport makes a routine takeoff. After years of flying, she has got used to understanding cabin crew's instructions, even though she can't hear what they're saying.
I've flown frequently, and I can see by their bodies and their behavior that they're making an announcement. You can absolutely see from the visuals that this is what's happening.
Dancer Franklin Lorenzo is also on the flight, heading home to New York after a performance in Houston. Franklin was never a nervous flyer, but perhaps this time he has a premonition of what is to come.
I was with a friend who was sitting next to me, and I told him, it's funny how these devices just take off and fly, being so heavy. And I recall saying, but when they go down, they go down.
But as the plane travels from Tennessee to the East Coast, there is nothing out of the ordinary about this journey. And Aidan is on familiar territory, interpreting the cabin crew instructions as the plane makes its final approach to LaGuardia.
People put their seat backs and trays up, and I know the routine. And when I see those behaviors, I know that the flight is about to land.
But when the plane approaches the runway, everything changes, and the passengers start to sense danger.
As we're coming in, the speed increased of the aircraft, and the aircraft started to tip forward, which was concerning to us because that's not how an airplane lands.
All of a sudden, it started crashing downward.
We're descending at an incredible rate.
Half asleep, Franklin misses the drama. That is, until he's abruptly awakened.
As we were making the approach, I had my eyes closed because I had not slept well. And then before I knew it, we hit the ground.
The impact was extraordinary. spent almost 15 years as a firefighter, and I've never experienced a sensation like that.
The foam went on the floor and ahead. I managed to stop it with my foot. Then I grabbed it and I started filming.
All of a sudden, the plane was just moving in these odd directions. So clearly at that point, we all knew the landing was not normal.
The landing was far from normal. The pilot had touched down at such a speed on the front undercarriage that it smashed into the body of the aircraft. The 737 then careered over 2,000 feet along the runway before grinding to a halt in a tangled mass of metal. The problems had started during the initial approach. The first officer at the controls at the time had set the flaps at 30 degrees instead of the correct 40 degrees, and the plane came in far too fast.
The aeroplane should be established at 1,000 feet, with the landing flaps down, gear down, the speed right, in the groove. It obviously wasn't.
Despite this error, the captain, who has the ultimate responsibility for the aeroplane and its passengers, did not take over the controls until the plane was just 27 feet above ground.
He was going too fast, trying to put the aircraft down on the runway instead of carrying out a go-around. What's a go-around? A go-around means you actually take off again in the air. You apply power and just start to climb away again, back up to a suitable height, advise air traffic control, and come round for another approach. This time better. I suppose to go around for some people, it could be a loss of face. In other words, you know, I've made an error, and everybody knows I've made an error, so I'll carry on and try and get a landing out of this.
As a consequence, the plane hit the runway at an incredible speed.
The only way she could put that aeroplane on the runway was to put it down nose wheel first, and they're not designed for that at all, which is why it gave way, collapsed, and broke into the aeroplane.
The 737 careered along runway 4 for nearly 20 seconds, to the horror of the 145 passengers.
I think the gears had gone under, and so we were just scraping along the ground.
The plane finally came to a halt resting on the nose, leaving Aidan in the chilling position of being stuck in a crashed plane with no reliable form of communication from the 737's crew.
As a deaf individual, I couldn't hear what was going on, so I was watching my back and making sure that I could get out, because we know how people will panic. So I was keeping my eyes on everyone in order to survive.
British Airways Flight 2276 to London was approaching takeoff speed on a Las Vegas runway when one of the fan blades in the high-pressure compressor failed, blasting out fragments into the left-hand engine, which exploded into flames. 157 passengers, including British holidaymakers Paul and Ellie Wooldridge, are still on board the fully fueled Boeing 777 while the fire rages.
I looked to the right and the engine was just a massive fireball. Just a complete fireball, and I said, God, this plane's going to blow up.
Set the evacuation alarm going, so that sets the motion for the cabin crew to get the passengers off. And then I did a mayday to the tower, asking for the fire services.
I didn't have my shoes on, I'd left them where they were, everything was left where it was, and I was at the back door, and the steward opened the door, and we just waited.
The cabin is quickly filling with toxic smoke as Ellie and husband Paul suffer an agonising wait for the escape chutes to be activated.
The chute come out, I was first down. I didn't wait for Paul, I was first off.
So we come down the slide and we got to the bottom, and without swearing, I just said to her, run, run, it's gonna blow. Because, you know, it's taken off, it's got 10, 12 hours worth of fuel on there. It's just a massive bomb, really. We was literally running for our lives.
I can remember my feet just burning because I had my flight socks on, and it was only like 4 o'clock in the afternoon out there, and it was burning hot, and my feet are burning, But I was just running. I've never run so fast in my life.
Paul and Ellie abandon all of their possessions as they rush to escape the stricken plane.
We left all our stuff on there. We left hundreds of pounds of stuff up in the cabin. But, you know, that's nothing compared to your life, is it? Just get off that plane as quick as you can. Yeah, we didn't bring nothing down, no.
But not all the passengers are quite so sensible.
You can see that the passengers were taking their baggage off with them. It's possible to see that on this film. That's a definite no-no.
Well, the reason people shouldn't take the bags off in an evacuation is because it causes a delay. While they're reaching up into the overhead locker, that's a delay. You know, it might be 5 seconds, but that can be a matter of life and death.
With no luggage, Paul and Ellie quickly flee the danger zone and look back on the horrifying scenes unfolding as the engine continues to burn.
When you think you're far enough away from it, you just turn around and you're just watching it and you're still seeing people coming off of it. And you're thinking, how have I got off of that? Like, there's still people on that plane.
As the passengers continue to slide down the escape chutes, they are far from safe, with the plane still at risk of bursting into flames. Routine emergency processes normally prevent the fire from spreading, but in this case, the damage to the engine means that fuel is still feeding the fire.
When we get the fire warning, one of the things involved is pulling a fire handle, which actually shuts off fuel, hydraulics, etc. to the engine. If you had a normal fire, and the fire extinguisher as well, should be enough to put the fire out. But because this was catastrophic, those fuel pipes had been split open, so the fire was being fed by residual fuel.
And the risk is that the fire will spread throughout the plane and even into the path of the fleeing passengers.
The wings are fuel tanks, that's where most of the fuel is kept. And if you have an engine which is below the fuel tank on fire, that could set light to the fuel tank. And it could go in any direction where the people are trying to get off, and they could be trying to evacuate into flames.
Thankfully, in this case, the Las Vegas Fire Service arrive within 2 minutes of the plane coming to a halt and cover the engine and much of the rest of the aeroplane in flame-retardant foam. Their quick work ensures that the fire does not spread and potentially cause much more serious problems. As they bring the fire under control, Chris and his team make their final checks in the flight deck.
By the time we'd done that, then the cabin manager come up to the flight deck, said everybody's off, and that she was getting off as well.
Chris and his 2 co-pilots are the last people to leave the plane.
We were checking that basically everything is shut down, and it was safe to get off. There was smoke everywhere, but then we went down the same slide. By the time I went down, they actually sprayed it with foam, so it was very slippery, and I went down extremely quickly. But then it's getting the passengers together so we could count them and make sure everybody was there.
Chris and his crew check that all the passengers have safely evacuated the plane. But for many of the unfortunate 157 British Airways customers caught up in that terrifying situation, the effects will last long after that day. November 2011, Amritsar, India. Nearly 200 visitors from the West Midlands in the heart of England have flown out to the Punjab on newly established airline Comtel Air. Many of the passengers are British Asians back in the old country to visit friends and family. Amongst them is Birmingham-based Lal Dadra, on his regular annual visit with his family to see relatives back in India.
Our family holiday was fine, but it was just obviously getting back, which was the big issue.
Kamal Paul from Kettering is flying over for a friend's wedding.
So I did all the touring, and after 12 days I said, thank you very much, it's time for me to go home.
The flight out to India had been Lal and Kamal's first experience with Comtel Air, a small Vienna-based airline.
It was fractionally cheaper than the other flights that were available. I think it was only cheaper by £50 per person, but there was 3 of us going at the time. So as a family, that was £150, which we thought, we could save. Little did we know we'd be spending so much more.
Journey out there was fine, and we arrived in Amritsar. No problems, collected our luggage at the other end. and got off and headed off towards our functions.
But as Lal and Kamal prepare to head home, they have no idea what's in store for them. They return to Amritsar Airport to find the Comtel Air departures desk in chaos.
Everyone was like walking around, all confused, saying, oh, the flight's cancelled. We were like, what do you mean the flight's cancelled? We were asking the people at the airport, they didn't have a clue. They were like, look, the flight's cancelled, go home. We were like, well, when is it going to be rescheduled? They didn't have any information for us.
We requested 5 hours ago.
And each time we went, the people at the airport said, the flight's not going ahead, go home. So we had to go home. And then the third time, they did say that the flight is going to run. We were just relieved that the flight was going. So even though it was delayed 10 hours, we were still optimistic that at least this flight is going to go. And when the flight took off, we were relieved. We're like, finally, we're going home.
It was like winning the lottery, to be honest with you.
So remarkably, and to everyone's great relief, the Boeing 757 finally leaves Amritsar. But they are not back in Blighty yet. And their relief is short-lived, as the airline makes a routine fuel stop at the airline's base at Vienna Airport.
We were expecting just a 30 to 35-minute stopover as the aircraft refueled. But an hour passed, and then we will start getting a bit agitated because we already had so many problems with this particular flight.
And the passengers are right to feel agitated as the journey takes a very strange turn.
The cabin crew announced that the airline had run out of money, and the only way that we could go back to Birmingham and return was to cough up, I think it was £24,000.
You want to go to Birmingham? You have to pay. We can't do anything else.
Basically, she's saying that if you want to get home, this flight is now going to cost you, in fuel, £24,000.
We felt we were being held to ransom.
Stuck as a virtual hostage at Vienna Airport with a £24,000 price on his head, Lal decides he needs evidence of this airside extortion attempt.
At the time, I had my camera on me, and my first instinct was to film what was going on because I didn't think anyone would believe us if we actually went home and told them this happened.
But the Comtel Air customers are left with very few options.
We were just absolutely outraged. Everyone was like, what can we do? But we realised that this was seriously the case, and the only way we could do this was to get the money. A lot of people were crying, a lot of people were so worried. But we were just, there's only one way we can get out of this, and we have to raise the dollars.
Kamal is one of the shell-shocked passengers, marched into Vienna Airport by Comtel Air staff to get money from a cash dispenser in the terminal building.
You were escorted off the plane into the Vienna Airport, get your ATM money withdrawn. As soon as you had your money, you frog marched back to that aircraft, back to your seats, told to put your belt on and stay still.
Held to ransom, the dumbstruck passengers are then forced to collect the demanded money together to hand over to the cash-strapped airline.
Yeah, so there's two people who took the responsibility to collect the cash, one to make notes, to write the names down on a piece of paper, and one collecting the money, and then it was put into a carrier bag.
We literally had to walk up and down the aisles. There's a lot of noise going on because people were frustrated. There was a lot of people pretending to be asleep who didn't want to put their hands in their pockets.
People started to cry. So they were melting down, saying, look, I haven't got the money, how am I going to go? How am I going to get back home to my family? And then other people, like there was a lot of good-natured people there who actually could loan them the money and exchange numbers. And I hope all those people got their money back because there was a lot of generous people on that flight.
When we had the right money, we were taking count on whom would give whom, and we were adding all this up. I then went to the lady's chief steward, who then in turn went to the captain who was hiding in the cockpit.
We saw the pilot at the front counting the money, and then he was happy. And once he had that, within minutes, the flight took off.
It was sheer relief that we had left the tarmac of Vienna Airport and we were returning back to our own home country.
The shaken passengers arrive at Birmingham International Airport to be met by relieved relatives and a media scrum.
When we landed back into England and we came outside, when we'd gone through immigration, there was just so many people around there because news had got home what was happening. So there was TV channels, news broadcasters, all waiting outside, family, friends.
But despite the press interest in the story and promises from the airline to reimburse them, the unfortunate Comtel Air customers never do get their money back.
Well, all we heard a few weeks later, the airline had gone bust. So that's it. So in that case, that all our hopes of receiving any refund just went. So we lost our money. I still can't believe it actually happened. Like in this day and age, being asked to pay for fuel for a flight that you've already paid for, it was just an absolute disgrace, to be honest.
22nd July 2013. After a catastrophic final approach, Southwest Airlines Flight 345 has made a crash landing at LaGuardia Airport. The plane has scraped over 2,000 feet along the runway before finally coming to a halt. But the passengers on board have no idea of the scale of the problem.
I had suspected that we had a flat tire.
Those tires probably bursted. Yeah, it's our phone right here. Thank you.
People were making concerned noises. And then shortly after, we came to a stop.
The tire's blue. This engine is on the ground. Here come the police.
Everybody's instinct was to get out of your seats and get off the road.
The landing gear is gone on this side.
People was getting up to get their stuff, and then that's when they announced, please have a seat.
We are not there. You need to take your seats. Please take your seats.
And then I noticed a little bit of smoke in the front of the plane.
Stay down. Stay down.
Probably within 15 or 30 seconds, smoke started coming into the cabin.
As the smoke spreads throughout the plane and emergency exits are still not opened, the passengers start to panic.
I'm thinking, oh my God, we're stuck in this tiny little space and I'm claustrophobic. And there was so much smoke and we couldn't see where the fire was coming from, but you could see them shooting the water back, in the front, in the middle.
There was smoke filling up the cabin. We needed to open doors and get people off the plane.
After an agonizing wait, the crew finally opened one of the rear doors.
Said, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually evacuating the plane.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, come this way. Do not bring your big bags. Do not bring your big bags. You will not be able to get down the slide with them. Please.
The flight attendants had opened the doors to allow people to get out, and they were trying to get us out through that exit.
But because the plane has been torn to shreds and has skidded along the runway, passengers have just one escape route.
Front doors were jammed. We could not use the doors on the wings because the turbines were still running, so they only opened one door.
You can see people coming out of the back of the plane. And the front door where we're sitting is still closed. Smoke is filling the cabin and we're right there and they haven't opened the door yet.
I was thinking this can blow up at any given second. I don't want to stay here to find out.
To his great relief, Franklin finally makes his exit down the rear chute, followed close behind by Aidan.
They decided to throw me out of the plane, and the policeman grabbed me by the back of the neck and was pulling me and was yelling at me, and I was trying to explain to them that I was deaf, and I felt very alone.
Franklin rushed to safety some 100 yards away from the plane and started filming the evacuation as the crew were at last able to release the front exit.
So when they finally opened the door, it was kind of this sigh of relief, like, okay, we're going to get off the plane now.
9 people suffered minor injuries during the evacuation. After an internal review, the airline dismissed the captain and required the first officer to undergo additional training. And Armed Forces veteran Franklin has never really recovered from the experience.
Coming out of the military, I saw things that most people don't see. As a result, I got out with a diagnosis of anxiety and panic attacks, which I think it has been made worse by this situation. So in the fact that I had to worry about that particular issue on my own, now when I get on planes, it's tormenting and it doesn't stop. and you can't do anything about it. But again, I'm in no position to say no to work, so I just have to push through, and as they say in the military, suck it up and get it done.
Other passengers of the ill-fated Flight 345 have had more success in coming to terms with their experiences on that day.
We believe that even the worst situations can be beneficial. You can learn something from them. Since that moment, we've really tried to just look at our lives and say, okay, are we really doing everything we're supposed to be doing? Because, I mean, it could have all ended that day.
I would say my attitude about flying is the same because I'm a daredevil. I've had so many experiences, and this is just another one of them. I think the point is you have to enjoy your life. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next hour, the next day, the next minute. You just need to enjoy your life.
8th September 2015, Las Vegas McCarran Airport. British Airways Flight 2276 to the UK was aborted during takeoff when the left-hand engine burst into flames. As the fire raged, Captain Chris Henke and his 12 crew members have managed to get the 157 passengers to the safety of the airport terminal. The shaken travellers are now being attended to by the British Airways staff.
Stewardess was younger than my daughter, and they was helping us, and they're coming, are you all right, you all right? And I'm thinking, like, I should be looking after you, you're my daughter's age.
There were a couple of the girls who'd only been in 6 months, so it's, you know, it's quite a shock to them, but and the way they organised it and got everybody, you know, at the end, it was tremendous, and they did an excellent job. I think the cabin crew were excellent.
Eventually, Captain Chris arrives in the terminal himself.
The captain, and he just looked really like ashen and grey, you know, really stressed, worried, whatever.
And somebody gave me a microphone and I just told them what had happened. We'd had a catastrophic failure, but I was pleased that everybody was off and okay.
Everyone just gave him a massive round of applause. You know, we were so pleased that he got us off there so quick. I mean, everybody knows it's a safe way to travel, but when something like that happens to you, it obviously makes your brain go into overdrive, doesn't it, you know?
It's just, I don't know. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through in my life. I hope I never have to go through it again.
BA had said just to say sorry for what had happened. Anywhere we go in the world, you can have a holiday.
We chose to go to the Maldives, Constance Halavelli, and it was just unbelievable. My daughter said to me, Mum, out of something so bad, something so good's come out of it, because we did have an amazing holiday.